G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the AustrAlien Podcast. As always, my name's TJ Hollis, and with me is the voice of the people, Mr. Shawn Mills. How you doing, buddy? What is the poop?
It's 2018. That's the poop. How exciting.
Absolutely.
I can't believe how fast last year went.
Yeah, well, I think it's nice to be on the other side of it. I think 2018 is going to be a lot better year for a lot of people, hopefully, and I think it's going to be a good time for all now that we're here.
Absolutely. Big changes, but everyone does, hey.
Exactly.
That's the thing, so.
Exactly. That's one of the things I've always loved about this time of year is you get that sort of positivity. A bit, the year's not long enough that it feels like it's dragging, and you don't feel like you're just drudging on. But you've got that positivity for what you can accomplish this year. Absolutely.
Well, it's 3 weeks into the year and I've still got the positivity, so it's better than last year already.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely. So, those of our listeners who haven't heard our podcast before, what we do is this time of year is we like to do a bit more of a light-hearted episode, a bit more of a retrospective of the previous year. Last year it was our second episode ever that we did this. So this year, let's crank into it with what was the largest stories of 2017. And for me, obviously, I think there's one that we can absolutely point our fingers at as one of the biggest ones, and that was the citizenship saga.
Yep, absolutely. Still going. Probably going to be one of the biggest stories of 2018.
Absolutely. But even in itself, I found it very interesting for all the hype and all the attention that surrounded it. It hasn't had much of an impact on the day-to-day life of most Australians.
A cynical person would say that's politics in general, isn't it?
Well, that could possibly be it. I do remember a certain person with the last name Mills describing it as a storm in a teacup at one point.
I still have that belief to a certain extent. It has been blown up a lot bigger than I think it really should be. But that's on one hand. On the other hand, the rules are the rules. So
absolutely. And there's a good reason for these rules to be in place.
Yeah, it's just like most things in politics. They've discovered a way to push it to the nth degree to screw over someone they don't like.
Exactly.
But yeah. So.
And I still personally have this sneaking suspicion that this was all started off by somebody who was trying to get rid of Scott Ludlam. I have that sneaking suspicion because, as he flat out said, somebody had been emailing me and telling me, had brought it to my attention that he wasn't eligible because of the dual citizenship issue.
Yeah.
And he never flat out said he had somebody trying to blackmail him, but the way he said it very
makes
much...
you wonder. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably a very fair thing to say.
But then again, that's just that's hearsay.
That's supposition.
It's supposition. What a fantastic word. That is a brilliant word there, Shawn.
Yeah. Word of the day, toilet paper, mate. Brilliant.
Fantastic. Some of us just use word of the day calendar, but you do you. Another one of the largest stories of the year was the marriage equality debate, and
yep, the results are in. It's passed. It's law.
It is now law, and thankfully it was law without too much negotiation needed.
Well, it's easy when both sides of politics are lefties.
Oh, well, that's an opinion right there. That's an opinion right there, and I don't think we're going to be going into that one. we could. This is the light-hearted episode.
I have to throw something out there for you.
Well, it wouldn't be a Shawn episode or it wouldn't be a Shawn conversation without the stirring.
Well,
other large story this year was One Nation Party seemingly gambling and losing in the Queensland election.
Hooray!
Yeah, well, I mean, I try to keep this quite non-partisan when I can. But hooray.
Hey, look, technically they're on my side of politics, and I'm going hooray. So,
Well, the question is, like,
they got one of our local members up, so, one of yours and mine.
Exactly. But the big question is, with them, is they had the strategy of placing preferences towards the sitting LNP and Labor members last, even behind their mortal enemies, the Greens.
Yep.
That was a very big gamble. Do you think that by doing it that way, instead of creating a more traditional preference deal with somebody, with one of the major parties, do you think that contributed as a major part to why they were only able to get one seat in Queensland?
I think it's a major part of it, because I think that what it showed, people aren't stupid. It may be my governing philosophy when it comes to politics that people are stupid, but they're really not. It's very hard to pull the wool over Australians' eyes in the long term. And I think they've seen One Nation at that election show that they are not a party that are interested in anything but wrecking it for anyone else. And that's all they did. By preferencing the Greens above the sitting member, they've got no moral authority because they don't stand for anything. Because, as you said, the Greens are the polar opposite of One Nation. And
not only the polar opposite, but a party that they have taken as many potshots as possible at.
Exactly. I think One Nation is... their cards on the table. One Nation's a joke. They've been a joke since 98. They got a veneer of respectability before the Queensland election, which has been shattered by the fact that they're a bunch of hypocrites that are only playing to people's worst fears. I can't blame people for voting for them. I think it was Paul Keating once said, the electorate never gets it wrong. The voter never gets it wrong. Yeah, I just think they're done and dusted. And I think that's a good thing. So.
I found it very interesting that I believe they got 20% of the overall vote in Queensland, though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but that also means 4 in 5 didn't vote for them.
Exactly, that is true.
Look, they did well in your regional seats. That election showed that there are two Queenslands, and I know that's been said a lot in the different commentaries and stuff post-election, but that election clearly showed there's two Queenslands. There's the prosperous Queensland down south, and there's the rest of us. There's regional Queensland. And I've never been, as you know, I've never been a subscriber to this, the southeast corner gets everything, blah, 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 justification for voting against the government, or, sticking it to the man or something that regional voters in the area that we're in tend to think like and say a bit. But I just because I don't believe that doesn't mean that there's not differences in the two areas and there's not different challenges in the two areas. And I think this election's really exposed that. The people who capitalised best on it were Katter. Katter did great. They targeted the seats that they thought they could win, and they flogged it in those seats.
Even though to the rest of the state at times it seemed a bit myopic, and a bit self-focused to a ridiculous extreme.
Oh yeah, well it is, but it worked.
It worked in those particular seats.
The thing with Katter and the Katter people, I think they're actually genuine people that have a belief that they are getting screwed. I don't think they're reactionaries in the same way that someone like Pauline Hanson's One Nation is.
Well, I have a big belief that Pauline Hanson's One Nation was trying to ride that wave of voter apathy that Trump and Bernie Sanders were riding over in America.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that the core policy of Pauline Hanson was look at the average One Nation voter was they're all politicians are all the same. We need somebody from the outside, someone different, which is what a lot of America had said this election by not only voting in Trump but also the huge amount of support that Bernie Sanders had.
Absolutely, yeah.
Hell, and even the esteemed Dan Carlin, who was the podcaster and political pundit in America, he's even been saying the need for this for the last 20 years.
Yep.
I suppose that's another $1 into my worship at the altar of Dan Carlin jar that we've got around here somewhere.
I need to bring him up
in. Yes, my obsessive need to bring him up in conversation.
That's all right though. Could be worse people to
absolutely
look up to. Respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the biggest story that we've never actually talked about, because it's only sort of blown up very recently, is this Me Too movement, the Harvey Weinstein thing going on in the US, going on in Hollywood at the moment. I think that's huge. I think culturally, absolutely. I think that's a huge thing.
You are absolutely correct, and I think the reason why we haven't spoken about this is because we haven't put out an episode since it blew up.
Exactly.
And I think it's a very interesting movement. There's a lot of controversy going on around it right now,
as there is wont to be in these things. Some of that controversy is interesting. It's like I really hope that it doesn't get lost in some of the controversy, because it is an important movement. People like Weinstein and that, they need to go down for their behaviour. It's completely unacceptable. It was unacceptable in the 1950s.
Yes.
It's unacceptable now. These things are not acceptable or unacceptable based on the year. They're not right and they shouldn't be done. The person, I think, we won't get into the specifics of it, but there's some other people that have been thrown at. Stuff's been thrown at them lately, and I think, is that true? Isn't it true? I do worry. The only concern I've got about the whole movement is that I worry that we're convicting people based on an accusation.
That's always something I'm very worried at whenever any of this sort of situations come along.
It's not new.
Whether it's not Cosby new. Back in the day, Cosby earlier last year, Spacey and Weinstein now. The other issue that I'm a little bit concerned with for it is that the goalposts you're starting to see a movement of the goalposts. Like, you've got things like what Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein, and I'm going to say allegedly did.
Yep.
Because proof or not, it comes down to innocent until proven guilty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer of that because I'm a big believer in our justice system.
Yep.
In the Western justice system, I'm a very big believer of that. But there's a very big difference with, say, the Spacey and the Weinstein and the Cosby and all of that. One came out just very recently as a time of recording where somebody detailed their date with Aziz Ansari.
Mm-hmm.
And reading it, and I read her manifesto about it, and that was just to my eyes, that was just a shitty date.
Yeah.
That was the case of, there was no rape there because when she said no, he stopped. He might have tried to do a couple of very shitty things. $1 in the swear jar again. I've got a whole bunch of jars for different things that I'm doing too much of. And he was, by no means was he a good person in this. But there is a clear-cut difference between that and between the Kevin Spacey incidents and the Harvey Weinstein incidents.
So what you're saying is Matt Damon was correct. There are different layers and different levels.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% familiar with what Matt Damon has said, but I'm just concerned that the Me Too movement now is being diluted and now potentially can be used as a witch hunt.
Yeah. Well, it's a concern, but I think it is a genuine concern, and it's a genuine concern of mine as well. And it's one of those things that you're not really allowed to talk about because suddenly you're against it. Well, that's the way I've seen it, and that was something when I mentioned Matt Damon. He basically said, there's different shades, and he was really pillarised for it. But it's absolutely correct. These people, they need to be exposed and they need to be rooted out, and that's the bottom line. The people, the Weinsteins and that sort of thing. And I think it just shows that men and women are equal, and they should be treated as people because we're all just people. There's a lot we can go into there, but yeah. So anyway, I think that's one of the big. That was one of the big stories of last year, and that'll be a big story going forward. We haven't had the Oscars yet, so.
Well, it's certainly not a concluded story by any means, and I think we're going to see a lot more come out as the next year or two rolls on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so speaking of which, let's head into a quick look into our crystal balls for next year, what we think the interesting issues are. And my first one, before we go global with it, I'd like, keep it. My first one is very Australia-based.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, can the LNP stop the bleeding?
No.
Because we're seeing a rise in Cory Bernardi's Australian Conservative Party.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've said, well, as you've said as well all year, the LNP has this hard conservative Christian right in it right now that, is obviously the face of that is Tony Abbott, but previously the face of it was also Cory Bernardi before he left and started his own party.
Yep.
And we've currently got a situation where the LNP is actually quite progressive in comparison to how it's been for the last 20 years.
Yep.
As I keep saying, you've got Malcolm Turnbull, who's a progressive masquerading as a conservative.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you've got Bill Shorten over in Labor, who's the opposite. He's a conservative masquerading as a progressive.
Yep.
And I think it's very interesting that we're in a position where we could potentially see 20% of the members of the LNP party leave.
Yeah.
In a 3-month block.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. To answer your original question, I don't think they can stop the bleeding because while they keep adopting Labor policies and trying to nullify, and it's a good, don't get me wrong, it's a great political tactic. Johnny Howard used to use it all the time. You basically take on the opposition's policy, tweak it a little so it sounds a bit like yours, and throw it out there, and it takes that argument away from the opposition. And that's what Turnbull's trying to do. That's why he took on same-sex marriage, in my opinion. Not to be crass about it or denigrate the actual outcome, but from a purely political point of view, it takes the barnacle off the hull of the ship. They don't have to worry about that anymore. It's done. Let's move on.
And it's now something that the left side of politics can't throw at the LNP anymore.
Yep, exactly. It's an issue that's done. It's an issue that now is it's in the past, and the LNP can go, hey, we actually did that, not Labor. Don't listen to what they're saying, because they've got all the words, but we actually took the action and got it done, regardless of everything else. That's what they'll spin it that way. That'll be fine.
Oh, absolutely. And everybody, and in 50 years' time, nobody's going to remember that the LNP viciously fought against it for decades.
Yeah.
And that even coming straight out of a Tony Abbott-led LNP government.
Mm.
You've got Tony Abbott, who is he was the figurehead of the no vote. Anyway, my next issue that I think is very interesting coming into 2018 is net neutrality laws.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to see? Well, first of all, are we going to see anything change for us internationally? If the proposed changes go through in America, and the second thing to think about there is, are we going to see that time-honored American tradition of, this thing didn't go through here, let's try to push it through somewhere like, oh, look, Australia.
Not this time, because we don't have net neutrality laws in Australia. We basically have a free market when it comes to internet providers. And we actually already have services that offer exactly what people are up in arms about in America, and we don't think about it. And this is just playing a bit of devil's advocate here. You take IINet, Westnet, that group, who I have my ISP through, and they already have a list of websites that they prioritise. So Netflix, for example, comes through. They've got to deal with Netflix, so Netflix is not metered. There's a pile of them anyway, but Netflix is probably the big one. They're not metered on those services. They don't, they get priority in the over their network. So, we've kind of got what people are already talking about in the States. I don't know if it's going to have that big of an effect. I don't know if there was such an outcry about it last time, when literally people marching in the streets over it. Be interesting to see if any of the big providers in the US, where there is competition, you can flick to someone else in even small markets.
No, but that's what is not the case in America at the moment. No, and this is where the whole net neutrality free market argument has been falling flat, is because there are services, there are ISP companies such as Verizon and Comcast in particular, who actually own they own the network in great big areas, like in half of the city.
Okay.
They own that network, and the laws allow them to say no other network can be built in this area. We have exclusive control.
Yeah.
And then they turn around and say, we're not going to let other ISPs run on our network.
Yep. Okay. Well, they'll never overturn stuff like that in the States. They're too afraid of big government interference.
And this was the big issue that Google Fiber ran into in America.
Yeah.
Because it was running, and they were trying to lay as much of it as possible, but they kept running into issues with, oh, well, we can't do this particular suburb because this is a Comcast suburb.
Yep.
We can't do this particular suburb. We can't do this entire town because it's a Verizon town.
Okay.
And, or an AT&T town. And those three are certainly the big ones.
They're the big ones, yeah.
But they're also notable because because when the Obama administration put in those net neutrality laws in 2014, it was in response to the actions that those three companies were undertaking.
Okay, yep.
Like there was a very famous deal where AT&T and Verizon and Comcast all banded together to throttle the data for Netflix.
Okay.
And then made Netflix pay through the nose to get it unthrottled, which then got, thankfully, that Obama administration, and then they weren't perfect, but they got that right.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then while we're in America, another interesting issue, this is just a talking point, is this the year that Trump gets impeached?
No.
And what is the impact of this Russia probe? Does that get finished? Does that get concluded this year with one way or the other?
Yes, the Russia probe gets concluded this year, and nothing will be done about it. People will still complain about Trump, and he will still be there at the end of his term. There's my prediction for you.
Do you think he gets a second?
No, not at all. Not if he keeps going the way he is.
Not if he keeps...
Yeah, actually, you know what? Let me qualify that. If the Democrats can put someone half decent up, the Democrats lost the last election more than Trump won it.
That is very true. Had they literally put anybody except for Hillary Clinton up.
Except Hillary Clinton up. And, you know,
I could have potentially won that.
Look, I think the drover's dog could have won that election over Trump, but I don't know. Trump.
To be honest, I'm not 100% positive that he gets the Republican nomination.
Depends how they go in the midterms. If they get flogged in both houses in the midterms, which I reckon is pretty damn likely.
Yes.
Yeah, he could possibly lose the nod. Mind you, he'll also be 70... What is he now, 72?
Yes.
73, 70. So he'll be 75.
75, yeah.
That's getting on.
Oh, there have been numerous presidents in their 80s and 90s, though.
Not in recent years. And it's a lot younger world than it used to be.
That is true.
Yeah.
So what about you? Do you have any interesting little tidbits you think are going to be stories this coming year?
I'm interested to see how Brexit plays out.
Absolutely.
That'll be interesting.
Has that been decided for a 2018 conclusion, or is that going into 2019
No, I
still?
think it's 2018 conclusion. I think they've pretty much told the union that they're out. From what I understand, though, they're looking at staying as part of the common market and just removing themselves from the union part of it.
Interesting.
Which is probably a little from column A and a little from column B. So,
well, I know that the hard Brexit group were very much anti being in part of the common market at all.
Well, I think the common market's been a good thing for them, so if they can stay in that, mind you, if they get out of the common market, that'll help us.
Yes.
You know, because we'll be able to sell a hell of a lot of crap to England again, like we used to before the 70s when they entered it. Not that we actually manufacture much anymore, but there you go. I think the other interesting stories will be... Yeah, I'm really interested in politics in Australia. I'm really interested to see what the LNP do. I know we've already touched on that, but I'm really interested to see whether they can stop the hemorrhaging. I really don't think they can, but that'll be the interesting story for me. So,
then just briefly, what about Catalonia?
Not sure.
I think
I'm interested to see it. See what happens.
I'm very interested to see exactly what goes on. How does this play out? I mean, this has the potential to be another drawn-out mess like the splitting up of Yugoslavia. Whether it's actually happens where Catalonia becomes its own country or not, this isn't going away.
No, not anytime soon. So,
and with the free vote, Catalonia went and voted in a whole bunch more people who were pro-split.
Yep.
So as much as the Spanish government in Madrid has tried to paint it as just a group of revolutionaries who happened to get power, jailed them, they were replaced with people who believe the exact same thing.
Yep. Yeah, well, that's what makes it interesting. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. That'll be really interesting to watch how that plays out. So,
absolutely. Well, let's get into a bit more of a light-hearted segment.
Yeah.
We got to do this last year, and it was our top threes of the year.
Yep.
So let's start with movies.
Movies, good one.
Okay, I want to hear just for a bit of fun. I want to hear, what is your worst movie of 2017 first?
Absolutely easy. The Dark Tower. Stephen King's Dark Tower.
Now, I haven't seen this, so...
Okay, don't. Have you read the book?
No.
No,
okay.
I
have not. I've never been a Stephen King fan, to be perfectly honest.
Oh, okay. I'm a huge Stephen King fan. big fan. Really love the Dark Tower books. It's the movie is horrible. Idris Elba, Matthew McConaughey.
How can a film with those two brilliant actors be bad?
Oh, it is. And I think that's what... Look, basically, whenever you do a book-to-screen adaptation, there's things you do and things you don't do. And they pretty much did everything you don't do. I don't know. It's just... it's an incompetent movie. It's horrible. It really is. It's not Stephen King's writing. Even if you've not read The Dark Tower, we can go to The Shining, we can go to Shawshank or Stand By Me or It. It was a great movie this year. Misery, that was a great movie of Stephen King's. I don't know how they managed to just crap all over this, but they did. So
fair enough.
Hollywood bomb. What's yours?
Well, mine's definitely a Hollywood bomb here.
Mm.
Justice League.
Okay.
That film had so much potential, but was, and you can wax lyrical all you want about its issues with losing directors and gaining directors, and whether you are...
That doesn't matter to the viewer.
No, it doesn't matter to the viewer. But it just had so many issues. The scripting was terrible. The casting was not crash hot in some positions. Looking at you, Cyborg. The cinematography was horrendous. It's like watching this film. Okay, I went and saw this in the cinemas. Look, I am a comic book film nut. I go watch nearly all of them in the cinemas, and they're generally some of the only films I will watch in the cinemas that year.
Well, they're cinema movies generally, so...
Yeah. Now, watching the special effects, whenever there was a scene with the Flash, those special effects were out of this world, absolutely brilliant. Watching the special effects with everybody else was like watching a D film. The dichotomy between the studio that did the Flash's effects and the studio that did Cyborg's effects and the studio that did Aquaman's effects and Batman's effects and all that, it was ridiculous. And the green screen work was absolutely terrible. Not at one point when there was anything that was shot on a green screen could you believe that they were actually at that position.
Okay.
And it was especially heinous in the big ultimate showdown fight at the end, which I'm not going to spoil if you haven't seen it. Go watch it. It managed to make Suicide Squad look like a good film, and I'm pretty sure that I savaged Suicide Squad in our last year's episode of this.
I'm pretty sure you did too, yeah.
Well, it made Suicide Squad look like a very watchable film.
Fair enough.
But let's focus on the positives here.
Yep.
Let's go to your top 3 films.
Cool.
What have you got?
Justice League. Absolute. Probably top 3.
Really?
Absolutely. Which is why I said very little when you were having your rant then.
Well, now that has completely surprised me, and I want to hear.
Okay, now
I want to hear what you've got to say.
This is not a DC versus Marvel argument, because I hate that argument. But
oh, look, I'm a Marvel fanboy through and through.
Yeah, I love the Marvel stuff.
I will always say that some of the greatest storytelling has been in the DC universe. Like Green Lantern's Darkest Night and Whitest Light sagas were out of this world. Brilliant. The Watchmen, people forget the Watchmen is DC.
Anyway, the movie sucked, but the comics were great.
Oh, the movie was brilliant, don't you dare.
Okay. Anyway, no, Justice League was great. You know why? Because it was actually a comic book movie made for adults. It wasn't made for teenagers like the Marvel stuff tends to be. You know, where everything has to be a quip and everything's a joke. That's something that drives me nuts in the Marvel stuff. See, I watched Thor Ragnarok this year, which was a great movie, but it was just one pun after the other, and I'm just like, come on. Let's just actually get on with the movie. Firstly, I think the casting is great, except for Flash. I'm not a huge fan of the person they put in Flash. Or probably... the only thing I didn't really like about Cyborg was he felt redundant to the movie. If they wanted to do a standalone movie before Justice League came out too early. They needed to do some more standalone movies first. But Cyborg's actually one that could have been a really interesting story. They breezed over his story. They did his origin story in that movie, which I thought, I don't really see the point of doing that. But anyway, Ben Affleck as Batman, brilliant, inspired, surprising.
I will very much agree with that. I thought Ben Affleck did a great Batman.
Surprising. And that's the biggest word I have for that piece of casting. Surprising. Henry Cavill as Superman is great. I think he's up there with Christopher Reeve, but actually
Absolutely.
looks like Superman. No, I just thought it was great. I thought it was really good. Great action, great... You know, they're all popcorn movies. So, no, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It's just a good action movie. It wasn't just full of stupid one-liners all the way through the movie. It was just... It's a movie you obviously had to see the Man of Steel and then Superman Batman to understand it. But, particularly Superman Batman was almost a direct sequel. But, no, it was great. Anyway, number 2 is Wonder Woman. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. That World War One stuff. And Gal Gadot.
Now, in saying that, I did not watch this film because I cannot abide Gal Gadot. I find her to be... You know, this is just my personal...
Yeah. Okay.
You know, my personal opinion. Her particular politics aside that I really dislike, I find her to be a wooden actor.
Yeah, but it's Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's a wooden character.
True.
Look.
Well, then again, Wonder Woman, I always thought in the comics, even though she's not a great character in the comics, she's always brought so much backstory and mythos to the DC universe as a whole.
Yeah.
That it's...
Well, that's what works so well with the movie. Is there's so much in it. It's you know, you got your Amazonian thing, but you've got your World War One with Steve Rogers and all that sort of stuff as well, and it was really good.
I don't think Captain America would have been in
Steve Rogers. No, who am I thinking of then? You know, the guy, her guy.
Yeah, her guy.
Yeah.
Her Steve Rogers.
Yeah, Steve Rogers is Captain.
Well,
America.
her agent Carter. Let's face it, it's the
Captain Kirk.
That's right. It was the same guy who played Kirk in the new Star Trek.
In the new Star Treks, yeah, the disappointing Star Treks.
I don't mind them. I thought the latest one was a bit average, but the first two of the reboot were quite good.
Yeah, I'll give it that. The second one was better than the first, but
the first had Eric Banner in it, and Eric
first
Banner's
did have
man.
Eric Banner in it. Boyda. Okay, third movie. Going to move away from superhero movies. Absolutely, I won't say I loved it or I liked it, but it was so extremely powerful. Was Dunkirk, Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk. Just so, it's history, as you know. We're both huge history fans.
Yes,
and it's basically the story of Germans are on the rise, 1940. They've basically pushed the Brits, the French, the Dutch, and the Belgians down onto Dunkirk beach, and basically the Allies take anything that can float and have this orderly withdrawal over the English Channel. Rescue 330,000 people, soldiers, that with the Brits supplying air cover and ground cover while there. The combat scenes in this movie are probably better than Saving Private Ryan. just unbelievably powerful movie, more so because it's true.
One thing that I really give Dunkirk is it has amazing use of scoring.
Yes, absolutely.
That film just was a textbook example of, if you're going to score a film, if you're going to write the music for a film, this is what you should be looking up to.
Yep, absolutely. It's an absolute masterpiece.
Brilliant. All right, well, we'll jump over to mine now. My top three. Before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to Star Wars: The Last Jedi and Logan.
Yes.
Because I think they were both absolutely brilliant films. And
I seriously considered The Last Jedi to add in there, but I couldn't go past Dunkirk. So,
well, even before we started recording this, you were mentioned how you had Logan on your list, but you took it out for, because you didn't want to have too many comic book films.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I think that also speaks wonders. Yes, Hollywood's getting a lot of flack for just how many comic book films there are at the moment, and there is a lot, but it says so much that so many of them are actually very good films.
How good was Patrick Stewart in Logan?
That man is a genius.
Amazing acting between just the two leads in that movie.
And not just those two, but Stephen Merchant as Caliban.
Yeah.
He was... And, look, I've followed Stephen Merchant's career ever since he and Ricky Gervais wrote the original British version of The Office, which was his first major thing.
Yep.
And it absolutely has blown my mind to see just how much that man has grown as an actor.
Yep.
And he was so good as Caliban. But anyway, we're going to get to my three. And my number one film of 2017 is Thor Ragnarok. And this is why I stayed a little bit quiet when you were talking about it.
I'll clarify. I didn't mind Thor Ragnarok. It wasn't a terrible movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I just in comparison. Anyway, go on.
Well, I loved, to start with, the acting was, top to bottom, the acting was absolutely amazing.
Yep.
Every single person nailed their part so well. I loved the jokes. I maybe that's just me, but I love those Marvel quips and one-liners, and I love all those little jokey scenes. The director Taika Waititi, he was brilliant, even just voicing Brew in it, and just like that man does, he always gets that one comedic character in all of the films that he directs and writes, and he always steals the show with that character. That's what he does. Like, if you've seen Hunt for the Wilder People, if you've seen What We Do in the Shadows, that's just something that he does so well. And I was very surprised and very pleased to see that Marvel let him direct his film. Like, yes, this fit in perfectly with the universe and with the whole Marvel universe, and it very much fit alongside of the Guardians of the Galaxy films, where it was, you can look at it and go, okay, they're using bright colors, they're using 80s typography and font, they're using all this particular imagery for the extended parts of the universe. The non-Earth centric parts. But this was at its heart a Taika Waititi film.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this was what he does so well, and it made me go and watch Hunt for the Wilder People. It made me go and watch What We Do in the Shadows. This made me want to go and seek out more of this director's work. And as somebody who's not the biggest cinema buff when it comes to directors, I did my time in uni, did enough screen work and you need to be able to pull apart everyone else's, cinematography and colouring and stuff like that. Yeah. But this made me want to go and find more from that director. And that's such a huge thing for me. It inspired me to go and see more.
Mm.
My number 2 film was Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Yep.
Because, look, it's brilliant. It's not the same as the first.
No.
And this was something that was super important to me, and why I thought the first one was absolutely a masterpiece. But the first one was trying to be Star Wars. He was trying to be a comedy Star Wars with its long shots, its silence in long silences in places. It was very. It reminded me of 2001: A Space Odyssey, the first film. This was a lot faster paced because it had a larger cast of characters, and it had one of my favorite minor characters of the Marvel universe, in Mantis.
Mm.
I thought that was absolutely great. Kurt Russell as Ego the Living Planet was an outstanding performance.
Oh yes, yeah.
I can never remember his name, but the guy who played Yondu was absolutely outstanding. But what I really took away from this is they managed to connect themes so well.
Yes.
And the theme of family, between, the relationship between Star-Lord and Ego, the relationship between Star-Lord and Yondu, who was his surrogate father, the relationship between Gamora and Nebula, the relationship between Rocket and Yondu. It was certainly who basically almost became a surrogate father to him in the film.
Yep.
And then also the relationship between Baby Groot and Rocket, where Rocket's had to, deal with, here's somebody who was his partner in crime, who was his equal, he's now having to be a father father figure to this young one. And I think it was certainly a very impactful film.
Yeah.
And they managed to not make you go, oh, that was just too much of blah 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 in any way, shape, or form.
Yep. Yeah. It was a very well balanced film. It was
absolutely.
Yeah. It was a really good movie. Really good movie.
And quickly, my number 3 was Get Out.
Yep. Beautiful. Good choice.
It was a very, very impactful film again. I think it had a lot to say about race and society in modern day America. Which whether you agree or disagree with what it said, the fact that it got you thinking was a nice touch.
Yeah, that's what good movies do. They get you thinking.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the music.
Music. All
right, the top 3. You want to start off with your albums?
Yeah, sure. I've actually only got a top 2.
Okay.
Because as you know, I've spent quite a lot of this year in a sort of a 70s punk / heavy metal
fair
mood might be the best way to put it. I've been listening to everything from Sabbath to the Pistols, and a lot of that sort of stuff. So anyway, first album would be Visions of a Life by Wolf Alice. Great album. I saw a interview. I was reading an interview about it, and they said, and this is perfectly describes it, the music is a love child of folk and grunge.
Okay, that sounds very interesting. Yeah. I am not the artist, let alone the album hadn't even hit my radar. So.
Okay, Wolf Alice. No, they are great. They are really, really good. Sort of alt rock, almost pop rock, but really different, really unique. Yeah, just really good music. Really worth listening to. I've probably had that on, I don't know, a good couple of months. I've been listening to that pretty much consistently. The other one that I'm really into at the moment is self-titled debut of Cigarettes After Sex. That is a great album, and I would call that ambient pop.
Well, that's an interesting genre there.
Yeah. So Cigarettes After Sex, that is an album. It's self-titled debut. That is an album well worth listening to. Very puts me in mind, not that it sounds like it, but it just, for some reason, I think Miles Davis when I listen to it.
Okay.
It's really, really great music. So that's my top two. I did think about concerts because I did get down to the Paul McCartney concert in Brisbane this year, and that was fantastic. So that's a lifelong dream. And that was amazing. That was 3.5 hours of a 72-year-old singing basically not a single song that wouldn't have made top 10 at some point.
Well, I mean, that's a hell of an accomplishment for anyone.
I mean, you go to a McCartney concert, and there's so many songs that you would expect, and you would be disappointed if you didn't get them. If you don't get Let It Be and Hey Jude and Yesterday, and McCartney, if you listen to his solo work, whenever he's covered Beatles songs, he covers his Beatles songs, which is fair enough. Yeah. But he covered a lot of Lennon's in this. Stuff that I'd never heard him do, like Please Please Me, Across the Universe. So there you go. There's my 2 albums and 1 concert of the year to cover my music.
Fair enough.
It's also the only concert I went to this year, so it had to be the number 1.
Oh, that's a lie. That is absolutely a lie.
Was that this year? Did we get a Gunners this year?
That was 2017.
Last
it was in February.
Oh, wow. Okay. Ooh.
Yes.
Oh, now I'm stumped. Which one was better?
I was going to say, I remember sitting right next to you in the far, far nosebleeds watching Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. And Rose Tattoo.
And Rose Tattoo.
Oh, geez, they're an awful band. You know what? I still have to give it to McCartney because it didn't have Rose Tattoo.
Didn't have Rose Tattoo and Angry Anderson having to deal with being out in the sun at 4 p.m.
And it was hot too, wasn't it?
It was very hot.
Blaring. Anyway, what's your 3?
My 3, first one is, and I want to put this out there, this is the best record that has come out of this country in 20 years, is Voyager with their album Ghost Mile.
Okay.
Now, Voyager are a progressive metal band out of Perth, and they've had a lot of success for a long time.
Yeah.
They've had a few decent albums, a few decent singles, but this record I never understood. To tangent for a quick second, when I was 15, I read this interview with Dimebag Darrell in Australian Guitar Magazine, and he talks about this album coming out that kicked his ass, in his words. Yep. This album, it totally kicked my ass, and I couldn't believe it. And I never understood what that truly meant until I put on this Voyager record.
Okay.
And because from top to bottom, and I'm not the biggest metal fan, but top to bottom, this record manages to blend sing-along, like very, oh geez, what would the word be? Like vocals that are very easy to get into. Like they're very, very approachable, easy, interesting vocals. But they're over musical parts that are so well crafted and so out of the ordinary that you can't help but just be absolutely amazed by them. The riff work in the song, in my 2 particular favorite songs on the album are Ascension and Lifeline. The riff work is just full of offbeat polyrhythms, full band unison parts, building like just the way that they build on things. Lifeline in particular, like the riff work, they don't use the same riff for any of the 3 verses, yet each riff that they use in each of the verses is the absolute most unique, perfect for that moment riff. And I can't gush on enough about this record. Great. For my money, it is the best album that has come out of Australia in 20 years. So I highly recommend everyone, even if you're not a metal fan, give this a shot. And one of the great things that it does is Voyager's always had this problem where their albums have never truly shown off and encompassed everything that their live show has to offer.
Yeah, yeah.
This record does. This record has everything.
Okay, cool.
That they do. I can't recommend it enough to people. My next 2 albums in this 3 are both from the same band, because they are, obviously my favorite band of all time, the Bare Naked Ladies.
Yep.
But my number 2 album is Ladies and Gentlemen, Bare Naked Ladies and the Persuasions, the old, which is an album they did in collaboration with the Persuasions, who are an old Motown group from the 60s and 70s. You have heard this group on pretty much every Motown record. They are an a cappella vocal group that did harmonies for everybody.
That sounds completely and totally unique.
It is, and what this record is them doing a bunch of Bare Naked Ladies songs completely rewritten and re-stripped back, plus 1 or 2 of the Persuasion songs as well.
Mm.
The Persuasions were obviously known for their hit single Good Times, but I highly recommend this. It highlights just how much of an amazing songwriter Ed Robertson from the Bare Naked Ladies in particular is.
Yep.
And it also highlights just the level of musicianship that you see in both of those acts.
Oh,
and it was also the last thing that the Persuasions recorded before their bass vocalist passed away.
Oh, okay.
And my 3rd album is the new Bare Naked Ladies one, Fake Nudes.
Fake Nudes, yep.
Which is a fantastic album record title there.
Yep.
And it appeals to me because I just love albums with great songwriting.
Yes. I love this album. This is actually one we agree on, and I actually considered having this in my list. I don't know why I didn't put it in there now that I think about it, because I did have a spare slot. But anyway. What's your best song on it?
My best song on Fake Nudes?
Yeah.
Oh, that's I'd have to say Canada Dry.
Okay, yeah.
Canada Dry is probably my favourite track on that one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just so well written.
Yeah.
And
as in lyrically?
Yeah, lyrically.
Yeah,
it is like it manages to completely encapsulate what Ed loves about his country without being patriotic, without being oh, look at my country, Canada, Canada, Canada.
Yep.
In the way that Australians and Americans can be. When we're being patriotic.
I love Dusty Rooms. That's probably my favourite track on it.
Oh, that's a good call.
Yeah.
That's
really
a
good
really
album. Really good album.
The lyric that always gets me in Canada Dry is because it's a song they're talking about being on the tour bus in America, and he says listening to Gordy's making me cry.
Yep.
Which is a reference to Gordy, who was the lead singer of the Tragically Hip.
Yep.
Who them and the Bare Naked Ladies are just they're the 2 big musical folk heroes of Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
And he actually passed away last year as well.
Yep.
And it was so interesting to see that Justin Trudeau was the one who made the announcement to the world. The Prime Minister of Canada made the announcement to the world that he'd passed away, and he was crying. Anyway, last top 3, because we, as always, we seem to we talk too much.
That's
have
all right.
long episodes.
That's what both our listeners like.
All two of them. G'day, Trent. Love you. Shout out to you. So top 3 video games, and I'm as hopefully our listeners know, I'm very much into my video games. I've been a long time gamer. Shawn is a games developer.
Yep.
So he's got a great insight.
And I had to actually think about my list this year because I didn't release anything, so I couldn't just stock it with my own games.
Yes. No, well, one thing I was very happy about is it took a lot of thought because there were so many really well done games this year.
Oh yes.
And there were so many that didn't make my list, like that I thought, had you asked me 6 months ago, absolutely would have made my list. Like, the new Legend of Zelda.
Yep.
Mario Rabbids. And
Mario Odyssey.
Well, spoiler alert, that made my top 3.
Okay, well, fair enough. It didn't make mine.
Wow.
No.
Well, why don't you hit us with yours?
Okay. First up, I went with Uncharted Lost Legacy. Now, I love the Uncharted games, and I think they're a perfect blend of action, adventure, but Naughty Dog, the stories that they can tell in a game is just... I think that they are second to none. I think Naughty Dog are absolutely second to none when it comes to, those sort of cinematic stories and that they can tell in games. Lost Legacy I liked because they didn't try to milk the Uncharted franchise. Nathan Drake, his story had finished. They'd done the 4 games, and the 4th game was so good. It was such a great ending, and it wrapped up his character and it wrapped up his story so well that to push out another game would be like, ugh. So, instead they took one of the favourite characters that have been in all of the Nathan Drake ones and just gave her own game. And just, it's exactly the same as all the other Uncharted's. It's the same sort of open world, puzzles, driving, a hell of a lot of shooting, solving archaeological finds and stuff like that, but just a great game. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Probably a highlight for me on a personal level is my 4-year-old played it with me, as in he sat there telling me what to do. Drive down there, Daddy, drive down there. I can't drive down there, Alexander, it's a waterfall. I want to see you die. Thanks, Bear.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That was a highlight for me, but I loved it. It's a great game. It's one of the few games that I bought, maybe not on day one, but within the first week of it being released. Paid full price for it, sat down and just played the whole damn thing. It was just great. Number 2 is a game called Horizon Zero Dawn. Did you play that one?
No, I didn't play it.
No,
but I'm at least a little bit familiar with it from the amount of press coverage it's had.
The amount of good press it got. It's really good. It's an RPG, kinda. Action RPG might be a better way of putting it. Third person, post-apocalyptic world, which usually annoys me, but it was so well done. It's just a great game. I was really, really excited for that game to be released, and probably made my list for this reason alone, is that as you said, I am an indie game developer, and we've had some moderate success with our games, and that's been great. Our publisher for our first game was a group called Phoenix Online, and the CEO of that company, Caesar Bitar. Caesar is a fantastic guy, really, really good friend of mine. He actually, like a lot of indies, wasn't making enough money out of it, I assume, and went and worked on Horizon Zero Dawn as a producer. So the fact that Cez made that, plus the fact that it's such a bloody good game, it is so engaging and so deep and warm, and such a really good story, and a lot of different elements that you don't expect. RPG and action don't really usually mix together, but it did it well. So there's that one. The third one is Thimbleweed Park, which was a adventure game as in a pure classic 1980s adventure game by Ron Gilbert, who wrote the Monkey Island games for LucasArts back in the day. And Thimbleweed Park is a game where when Gilbert went out and said, I want to do a Kickstarter for this and raise some money, and he made did quite well on his Kickstarter, he basically said, I imagine that this is a game, I opened my desk drawer and found these discs of a game I made 25 years ago, and that's what I want to give you. And so that was his whole entire goal, was to basically make a game in those sort of early 90s adventure game, 256 colour looking feel, and they don't make those games anymore. So when Gilbert made that, it's a great game, and it's a great story, and it's very funny. It's got some brilliant characters. You flick between like 7 different playable characters in it, as in you progress through the story and you can change the character that you're using, because some might be able to do something that another can't and stuff. One of those characters is a sad clown. There's the peppy girl. There's anyway, there's a heap of characters. It is such a really good game. It is well worth getting. He's managed to get it out on basically any platform that will have it. Pretty sure he's even got it onto the Switch now, so
wow,
how that'll work on a Switch is beyond me, but I'm sure it'll be great. So yeah, that's my top 3: Uncharted, Horizon, and Thimbleweed Park.
Very cool. Some very good games on that. Well, I'm gonna do this one as
down to 3.
Oh, so much,
Yeah.
so much. I'm gonna do a countdown for mine. So for my number 3 game of the year was Sonic Mania.
Beautiful.
Which was now I grew up playing Sonic the Hedgehog. I had a Sega Master System. I had a Sega Mega Drive as a child. I played all of the Sonics that were available on those. I've even tried my hand at speed running Sonic 2, and trust me, I was very bad at that. But so I have a love for the 2D Sonic games, and I always maintained that there was not one decent Sonic game that was released after Sonic and Knuckles.
Yep.
And Sonic Mania is
Agreed.
the spiritual successor. Like, it was written to be the next game in that series.
Yep.
If this is the Sonic the Hedgehog that should have come out on the Sega Saturn.
Yes,
And that
absolutely.
was a thing. And but the thing I love about Sonic Mania is it was nothing to do with the actual Sonic team, and Sega itself didn't make this game.
Yep.
A bunch of indie developers got the license to make this game, including Christian Whitehead, who's and Headcanon Games, who are Australian.
Yeah.
As is Pagoda West, which is the other company that helped produce this game, is another Australian indie video game company. And this is a pure labour of love. The amount of amazing little throwbacks to minutiae of Sonic the Hedgehog lore and history.
Yeah.
Like, the developers' love for this series and these characters and these games just absolutely shines through.
Absolutely.
Like, there's one boss fight early on in the game, and this isn't really too much of a spoiler, but there's one boss fight where you get to the boss and you actually have to play a round of Puyo Puyo, which was released on the Sega Master System as Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. And that's one of the boss fights.
Yeah.
Early on in the game. And so it's just all of these very small things that they threw in, and the soundtrack for that game is absolutely outstanding. They took a YouTuber, which I'd actually been listening to his stuff on YouTube for years, named T. Lopes, I believe from Portugal. And he'd just been releasing remixes he was doing and remakes and covers of Sonic the Hedgehog music and other video game soundtracks. And they said, "We really like what you're doing with this. Do you want to make the soundtrack for this game?" and he blew it out of the park.
Yes, he did.
He was absolutely outstanding. I am very proud to say I have his soundtrack on vinyl for this game.
Nice.
And that's such
Very
a cool
nice.
feeling to be able to see somebody that you've watched and supported for years make it to that level. My number 2 game, Super Mario Odyssey, as I spoiled it before.
Yep.
It managed to redefine not only what a 2D platformer was and could be, but also what 3D platformers could be,
Yes.
and what open world platformers can be. If you look at this point, everybody's heard about how amazing this game is. If you have a Switch and you don't own this game, I don't know what to tell you.
Yep.
Go and get this game.
Absolutely.
It is absolutely it is an astounding piece of engineering. But my number 1 game of the year was a game that cost a grand total of $0. It is a free game.
Mm-hmm.
It is an indie game called Doki Doki Literature Club.
Okay. Never heard of it.
Oh, you absolutely need to go and play this game. It is a psychological horror game that is disguised as a visual novel dating sim. And it is, now, look,
I love the sound of that already.
yeah, look, to be fair, I've always had a love for Brechtian theatre and using meta elements in games, like with Undertale. I really appreciated all of its meta elements through it. Doki Doki Literature Club, DDLC, takes it to a brand new height.
Yep.
Where, I'm not going to give too much away because this game is best gone in blind. But basically, you're playing a Japanese visual novel dating sim in which one of the characters becomes self-aware in the background.
That's
And
amazingly
you actually play this game through to completion 4 times to get the entirety of the story.
awesome. Oh, nice.
At one point, it even hangs your computer where you can't do anything but be in this moment in this game
Okay.
until you realize that what you need to do to get past this challenge, to get past this segment of the story, is to go in and edit the game files yourself.
Wow.
The meta moments of this game are just completely outstanding.
Yeah.
It is all in all over your 3 playthroughs that you have. It goes for maybe 6 hours, 5,
Okay.
6, 7 hours,
Yeah.
all up. It is the first 2 hours feels a bit weird because this is before any of the actual game itself comes through. Because the first couple of hours, which is your first playthrough, is you're just thinking, why am I playing a dating sim? Why am I playing a dating sim about high school girls and poetry? But once you get to the end of that first playthrough and the super surprising twist, the super surprising ending, which literally comes out of nowhere and makes you go, what the hell? Where did this come from? And it boots you back to the introduction screen again.
Yep.
And you've got to realize, all right, I'm gonna play this again. What? Okay. Why is this bugging out? What has happened here? What are these issues? And I don't want to spoil anything on this game. If you're not going to play it, which you absolutely should because it's free. By the way, it's free on Steam. It is $0, 0 cents free.
Yep.
If you're not going to play it, then you should at least watch a playthrough on YouTube. I suggest the Game Theorists, Matt Pat and his wife had a playthrough on one of their live streams.
Yep.
Pretty much everyone else has done it. You know, Markiplier's, Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie, whoever your favourite narcissistic person with coloured hair of the day is. But
Love it.
I can't recommend this game. I can't recommend this game enough. It is an experience.
Yep.
And once you have played it through to completion, you can never play it again on that computer.
Oh, okay.
This game is all about meta elements.
Yep.
And then, not only that, the Dan Salvato, who was the one guy who made the entirety of it, he added in an ARG within some of the game's files that's starting to talk about what his next game is, which is Project Libertiana, which comes out at the end of this year, and I cannot wait for it. I don't like horror.
No, fair enough.
I do not like horror at all. I am absolutely...
I'm going to check that out.
You really need to. You absolutely need to. Anyway, but we have rambled on for a long time.
We have. But that's
so
right.
I just want to say thank you to everybody who's taken the time to listen to us in this last year. We've started to build this up, and it's feeling great to see the progress. As always, you can hit us up on Twitter. You know, you can get me there at TJRule34.
Or you can get me at ShawnMills77.
Absolutely. Or you can hit us up at the AustrAlien Pod. That's spelled Australian, like aliens, like the things coming from the sky, hopefully this year. As always, you can see us on Facebook, on the Twitters. Come and hit us up, talk to us. Tell us what you want more of. Tell us what you want less of. Tell us what you hate about us. Tell us what you love about us, if there's anything.
Absolutely. Love to, suggestions as well, things that you want us to talk about. That's what we want. We want to talk about what you want to listen to. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And as always, we'll see you guys later. Here's cheers.